And thank you so much for joining us for our in-booth chat to learn about our Buzziest books from ECW Press coming in spring 2023. My name is Elham Ali. I am the Senior Publicist and Trade Marketing Lead at ECW, and I'm so excited to be talking about these books because the coming spring 23 season is a really big one for us. In early 2021, ECW brought on two new acquiring editors, Jan Sukfong Lee and Pia Single. ECW historically has been a press that publishes something for absolutely everyone. We have an incredibly wide-ranging list of books. If you go into our backlist, you'll find something for absolutely everyone. And so by bringing on two new editors, we really wanted to expand that even further. And so this coming spring 2023 season is when their first acquisitions will be published. And again, we're just broadening that list even more. On top of Pia and Jen L, one of our production editors, Jen Albert, also started acquiring more sci-fi and fantasy for us. Jen Albert is the absolute queen of spec fic in Canada, and her goal is to make ECW one of the leading spec fic publishers in Canada. I would actually highly recommend that you go into Publishers Weekly. I'll actually drop the link in the chat. Jen A published this article in Publishers Weekly talking about the state of SFF publishing in Canada and how it's really, there are so many incredible voices publishing sci-fi and fantasy and speculative fiction in Canada, but a lot of them tend to publish in the US. And so what she wanted to do is really establish ECW as one of the leaders. And so we're really, really thrilled to be doing more of that. And that's actually where we're going to start. So the first few books that I'll be talking about today are some of these fabulous sci-fi and fantasy books. The first one being just really incredible. And also, like, ECW has also done beautiful, beautiful covers, but it's just our cover game is only getting better as the seasons go. And you will see some real stunners today. The first one I wanted to talk about is this book, The Winter Night by Jess Battis. This is a queer modern Arthurian tale set in contemporary Vancouver. Jess Battis, who uses they, them pronouns, is the author of the Occult Special Investigator series and is really living the dream as a writer because they got to combine all of their passions in one book. Jess teaches queer and trans studies, as well as medieval literature and representations of disability and neurodiversity in pop culture at the University of Regina. And you find all of those in this book. In The Winter Night, this is set in a world where the Knights of the Round Table are alive and well. That is, until they start dying. Hildy is a Valkyrie who is investigating the murders of the knights, and her prime suspect is Wayne, an autistic college student who is the latest reincarnation of Sir Gawain. Wayne doesn't want anything to do with round table feuds, family secrets. They're just trying to live their life in a world that is not made for neurodiverse people. But in order to clear his name, he and Hildy have to team up to take on fallen knights, tricky runesmiths, and the weird sisters of Gastown in order to figure out the truth before the bodies really start piling up. Classic retellings are super popular right now. Books like Once and Future by A.R. Capetta and Corey McCarthy, Cinderella is Dead, Circe, they show just how hungry people are for unique and diverse takes on familiar stories. And this is exactly that. It's a classic reinvention that combines myth, urban fantasy, and crime procedural and epic all in one fabulous book that comes with a distinctly queer perspective. The Winter Night is a propulsive urban fantasy that asks who gets to be legendary and ultimately how do we make our stories our own. Jess will also be at the Fiction SFF like sci-fi fantasy horror panel at 3:30, so you can hear them talk a little bit more about this beautiful, wonderful book. Speaking of beautiful books, the next one I have to talk about is also just pretty stunning. This is The Stars of Mount Quixx by S.M. Biko. This is coming out on April 25th in 2023. You might know S.M. Biko from their previous series, Children of the Bloodlands. I have those here. This was a trilogy that received a lot of praise for its unique mythology, complex world building, and very smart, engaging plots. And you find a lot of that in this book and the series as well. This is the first book in the Brindlewatch Quintet. This book, Stars of Mount Quixx, follows two sisters who could not be more different, rebellious Ivory and society sweetheart Constance, who have been banished to the sleepy town of Quixx by their parents. They soon learn that something very sinister and monstrous is lurking beneath the town's perpetual fog, and they must team up together and with a very dapper spider monster named Derek to save themselves and the town. The series is, like I said, a quintet, but these are 5 sort of standalone but interconnected books. They explore different aspects of the Brindlewatch world. The Children of the Bloodlines was a bit older and darker. Stars of Mount Quixx and the Brindlewatch books skew a little bit younger in terms of YA. They're full of very charming and relatable characters. The focus is on found family and friendship, and they also contain a huge amount of LGBTQ plus representation. It's an optimistic, unabashedly queer modern monster story that is perfect for fans of the Miss Peregrine series by Ransom Riggs and the Spiderwick Chronicles. And the Spiderwick Chronicles are books that this really reminds me of. I read them when I was younger. And if you have young readers in your community who are looking for those kind of adventure stories where sort of little kids are dragged into, or young people are dragged into a magical world and have adventures, this is perfect for them. The next title I wanted to talk about is very much adult and very dark, but also super cool. This is The Marigold by Andrew F. Sullivan. That's coming out on May 18th. In The Marigold, Andrew Sullivan, who has been called one of Canada's most talented young writers, combines eco-fiction and body horror in a novel that explores the dark side of evolving cities and urbanization. The novel weaves together multiple characters and storylines, all focused around one crumbling condo tower. Its foundations have been infected with a toxic mold that's spreading throughout the city called the Wet. A lot of people deny that the Wet exists. People don't want to sort of face the fact that there's something very sinister spreading throughout the city. But then you have our characters who have to face it head on. Some of these perspectives include a public health inspector who's investigating the mold. You follow a young girl whose friend has disappeared into a sinkhole and she's trying to find out what happened to them, and a developer who's willing to do absolutely anything to make their project a success. Although the city is set in Toronto, the examination of crumbling urban centers that have really been abandoned to corporate interests is pretty universal, and a lot of readers will recognize their own cities in this story. It feels super dystopian, but you kind of know that it's like just around the corner and is rife with human insight. Nabin Rathnam, who you might know as Nathan Ripley, the author of A Hero of Our Time, called it societal critique in the only way that makes sense right now. Delirious, meticulously planned horror, which is really the best way that I can describe this book. I've seen some praise for the cover. It is pretty incredible. It captures that feeling of sort of like something being super wrong. Everything about it feels wrong, but still kind of engaging, intriguing. You want to get closer, you want to see what's going on. And a lot of readers have responded super well to it. This is one of our most requested books on NetGalley ever, and they love it. We've gotten so many 5-star reviews who called the book terrifyingly good. One of those books that will suck you in for a long time and that you will remember for a long time after reading. It's a must read for fans of dystopian novels and eco-horror. And another reader called it a wonderfully terrifying look at life in tight places. I was truly on the edge of my seat. That is The Marigold. That was all the sci-fi and fantasy that I wanted to talk about today. The next couple of books are much more literary, but also just absolutely fabulous. And this first one is one that I'm so excited about. I cannot shut up about it. This is We Meant Well by Aram Shazia Hassan. It's coming out on April 11th, 2023. This is an absolutely incredible debut novel about power and privilege and what it means to be truly charitable in the world. The novel follows aid worker Maya, who is called from her LA home to manage a crisis in the fictional village of Likani in Africa, when a member of her team is accused of sexually assaulting a young woman in the village. On her arrival, Maya finds herself caught in between these two worlds that she tries to inhabit, the world of the charity and the people that they are meant to serve, but also the freedom and power that the village affords her compared to the constrictions of her life at home. Ultimately, what she is caught between is the secret contradiction of the aid worker. Seemingly, they are in these places to serve the most deprived, but ultimately they are foreign companies there who are governing these people as well. The interesting thing about this book is that it's actually born out of Aram's real-world experiences working with global NGOs. She currently works as a consultant for the UN, and so it's really an insider's look at the systems that these groups function under, as well as a sneak peek into the sort of internal world of people who give up their entire lives to move to remote areas to do what we think of as incredibly good work, as incredibly selfless work, but there is a very sort of dark and contentious undertone to it that Aram really puts on display here. We Meant Well pushes readers to examine their ethics and take a really hard look at the ways that our lives here in the global north are inextricably woven with those in the south. This is another one that is a hit on NetGalley. Readers love it and have called it engaging, important, beautifully written, and one reader even called it easily one of their top 5 favorites of the year. That is We Meant Well by Aram Shazia Hassan. Next this is one that I don't have an arc for, but I will just show you the cover. This is Sunsetter by Curtis LeBlanc. This is a fantastic thriller, very literary thriller that follows a pair of suspicious deaths on the opening night of the Sunsetter Rodeo. 2 teens, Dallin Dermott and Hannah Fields, must plunge headlong into their own grief and anger to uncover the criminal truth about their town. This is a fast-paced literary thriller that peels back layers of small-town police corruption, drugs, and youth disillusionment. This is kind of like Euphoria set at the rodeo. It's prairie noir that is anchored in perennially current issues like the opioid crisis, police brutality, and the dangerous restlessness of small-town youth, as well as the decimation of late-stage capitalism on these small towns. Curtis is also going to be on a panel today. He'll be talking at Fiction, the Contemporary World at 2 p.m. So you can definitely check him out there. The next couple of titles I want to talk about are classic ECW. We are one of the independent publishers in Canada who is still committed to doing mysteries, Canadian mysteries. And so we're really excited to talk about these 2 from ECW longtime authors. The first is 6 Ostriches by Dr. Philip Schott. This is the follow-up to last year's 54 Pigs. Dr. Philip Schott is a veterinarian who's taken his 30 years of experience in veterinary medicine and channeled it into these wonderful, quirky, cozy mysteries. This one sees Dr. Peter Bannerman and his sniffer dog Pippin back to solve a mystery that involves a series of animal mutilations, a Viking artifact, and a shadowy group in the small town of New Selklos. Also, ostriches are involved, of course. This is a lovely, cozy mystery, perfect for readers who love like a quirky sleuth, something like ECW's own Epitome Apartments. I love Miss Marple, Father Brown, like those, I would never think that this person's like baking skills would make them super good at solving a mystery. It's that kind of book. If you love animals and cozy mysteries, you'll absolutely love these books. Next mystery or crime novel is The Get by Dietrich Keltice, another absolute beast when it comes to writing. Dietrich has published many, many books with ECW, including his last one was The Get, and the best this one, Under an Outlaw Moon, which won the Best Novel Award at the Crime Writers of Canada. The Get sees Lenny, who works as a ruthless gangster in Toronto. He spends his days terrorizing local businesses into paying for protection for their shops. But Lenny is pretty bogged down in debts of his own, and he would rather get than be gotten when his wife kind of gets tired of him and his gangster nonsense and decides that she wants a divorce. He's terrified that she'll take everything. So he comes up with a surefire plan to end both his marital and money problems all in one go. Dietrich was born in Cologne, Germany. He has published a multitude of novels, including the 2015 hit The Deadbeat Club, Ride the Lightning, and Under an Outlaw Moon. So if you love a crime novel and want to find a new prolific author with a deep backlist to dive into, you can check out Dietrich Keltius and The Get. So finally, the last few books I want to talk about are nonfiction, and these are all really exciting because they are debut books by these three authors, and so these are very exciting and important new perspectives that we get to bring to the world. The first one is Bleed, Destroying Myths and Misogyny in Endometriosis Care by Tracy Lindman. This is a scathing, rage-fueled examination of how we treat and mistreat endometriosis across medical systems today. Endometriosis, if you don't know, affects roughly 10% of people who menstruate. That equals about 190 million people worldwide. And yet, despite its prevalence, in 2021, the Journal of Women's Health named endometriosis one of the most underfunded female-dominant diseases, especially considering its massive burden. This book blends memoir and journalism in a timely, relevant, authoritative, and accessible, and most importantly, very empathic take that combines comprehensive research and interviews with endo sufferers, along with Tracy's own story, having lived with endometriosis for a quarter of a century herself. All that said, Bleed is not a self-help book at all. It's not a how-to manual on living with endo. This is an evidence-based medical expose that validates those who have been gaslit, mistreated, or ignored by medicine, and spurs readers to fight for nothing short of a revolution in medical care. Bleed follows in the example of, I think about, it was by Anna Mailer-Paperny, Hello, I Want to Die, Please Fix Me. It's kind of the same thing. It's a medical book that investigates how and why in the history of this particular aspect in medicine. In Anna's book, she was looking at mental health and suicide, whereas this one focuses on endometriosis, but it combines this very personal story with a medical story that really we should all be a little bit angrier about. And Tracy really fuels us to anger and rage and hopefully change. That is Bleed by Tracy Lindman, out March 21st. Next is The New Masculinity by Alex Manley, who uses they, them pronouns. Alex is an Ask Men editor and a non-binary writer who creates a guide for escaping the shackles of toxic masculinity in, I think it's like 13 easy steps. This is a step-by-step roadmap for a 21st century definition of manhood. Manley has seen firsthand how angry, scared, and lonely men are, and encourages readers to push back against various ways that masculinity harms rather than heals, as well as unlearning what it means to be a man, and replaces toxic masculinity with something much healthier. This isn't, however, a book that is just for men. It's also for women, queer people, and parents of boys who are interested in ideas around gender and masculinity, as well as in a way that kind of mixes assessment with what's wrong with concrete steps to help fix it. This is also very empathic. Alex fully understands why men might be scared and upset, but says that there really is a better way, a much healthier, more mentally and emotionally way to be in today's world. This is The New Masculinity by Alex Manley. And finally, the last book that I want to talk about today is The Trauma Beat by Tamara Cherry. This is a case for rethinking the business of bad news that's coming out on June 8th. This is a groundbreaking and thorough examination of trauma, specifically in relation to the media's coverage of crime for both victims and journalists. True crime has never been more popular, but so much of true crime focuses on perpetrators and investigations rather than the real life experiences of victims and the victims' families. This can feel very exploitative, and there's a lot of really relevant discussion in true crime communities about this exploitation and how true crime can kind of be consumed in a more conscious and ethical way. And that is central to this book. Tamara has been a longtime crime reporter and is now a victims' rights advocate who found that a lot of PTSD was being experienced by herself and her colleagues, as well as kind of realizing that maybe the way that we approach the reporting of crime, which is very important, isn't necessarily ethical or kind to victims and their families. This is trauma-informed journalism. Cherry is sharing the stories of more than 100 trauma survivors, both victims and their families, as well as interviews with crime journalists in order to expose a system that is set up to fail both survivors and journalists. And again, this also offers a better way forward. If you are a true crime fan or just somebody who is interested in sort of media consumption and media critique, this is a fabulous read for you. That is The Trauma Beat by Tamara Cherry. And that's the last book that I wanted to talk about today. Thank you again for joining me. I hope that you will check out Curtis's presentation at 2 p.m. as well as Jess at 3:30. Their panels are Fiction, the Contemporary World, and Fiction, Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror. You can also visit our booth and request some ARCs. I've shared the ARC request form in the chat. And please do also visit our website. We've been around for 50 years. We have thousands of books for you to choose from. And again, something for absolutely everyone. I'm sure that you will find something. And also feel free to send me an email. My email is in the chat. It's alhem@ecwpress.com. If you'd ever love an ARC or a book recommendation, or you just want to say hello, please do. Thank you again, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. Bye-bye.